3,
7,
8,
G,
3,
7.
8.
The two men awoke on the Jinhen spacecraft as it rocketed away from any recorded marker on the navigation system. Benjamin was on the taller side, and lanky. A contrast to the other man, Doug, who was slightly shorter and more stocky. Benjamin had woken up first, and was already fiddling around with the controls of the craft when Doug joined him at the control desk, in front of the large viewing window at the front of the ship, which was probably as big as a modest house. "What's happening?" Doug asked. "I'm not sure," Benjamin said, accessing the controls. "I'm trying to figure out where we are in the system. I can't really remember how to work these controls for some reason, but I think it's coming back to me." He turned to Doug. "Do you remember what happened before we passed out?" Doug shook his head. Benjamin paused for a moment, seemingly trying to remember. "Yeah, neither do I." He returned to the controls, trying at the very least to figure out where they were. He knew if they drifted too far away, they would end up in what the program referred to as deep space, a place that is unexplored and unrecorded, where events happen beyond explanation, a place where no one wanted to end up. The navigation system on the ship was broken, and according to the gauge that recorded how fast the ship was moving, they were going faster and faster by the minute. Meanwhile, Doug looked around the vessel. "Where is everybody?" Without turning around, Benjamin replied, "I think it's just us." Slowly, the ship began to creak under the rising velocity. Doug glanced out the viewports on the side of the ship, and the stars looked like they were stretching out into lines, as if they were going in hyperspeed. The hull began to rattle, and the stabilization gauges began to beep. Benjamin was muttering to himself as he fought with the controls. The ship rattled harder and harder, and more gauges began to beep in warning. Doug felt his breath quicken, and all of a sudden the ship came to a halt, and the electronics and lights of the Jinhen shut down. In total darkness now, the only noises echoing through the control chamber were the two men's ragged breaths. All of a sudden, with a hum, the vessel's emergency generator kicked on, and the lights and electronics slowly flickered back on. The two sighed, somewhat relieved. "We still don't know where we are," Benjamin said. "And I still can't remember anything past waking up a few minutes ago," Doug replied. They stood there for a moment thinking. All of a sudden, Benjamin rushed over to one of the viewports. No. "What is it?" Benjamin pointed outside the viewport. "No stars visible. And look around the ship. That dark purple mist. I think we might be in deep space." "Deep space?" "Yeah. It's this quadrant of space that we haven't mapped yet because no vessel or probe has made it in and out of the coordinates safely. There's a ton of unknown electromagnetic activity. Just a whole area we know nothing about, and ships seem to get shredded by it. And now we're in it." Doug was silent for a moment. "How'd you learn all that?" Benjamin opened his mouth to answer, but all of a sudden became puzzled. I don't remember, actually. I just know it isn't good. We have to work on getting the navigation back up so we know how to get out. Otherwise, we could end up just drifting deeper and deeper. All of a sudden, the radio buzzed to life. It took the two men by surprise. And what was even more shocking was the voice that came across the radio. It was a woman's voice, and the two men listened as the strange message played out.
3,
7,
8, 7, 8.
Benjamin grabbed the radio and spoke into the mic. Hello? Mayday. This is the crew of the Gene Hen Space Explorer vessel. We have lost control of our ship and have ended up in deep space. But the transmission just repeated the numbers.
2, 3, 7, 8.
It almost sounds like a recording or something, Doug said. Benjamin put down the receiver. That's very strange. But in a way, Benjamin felt he had heard those numbers before. All of a sudden, there was a thump on the outside of the ship, followed by what sounded like quick footsteps outside the hull. The two men looked up, terrified. We have to make our way to the weapons bay, Benjamin said. I think there's something out there. The two men left the control center and made their way down the ladder to the lower corridor that led to the armory. The lights began to flicker on and off, and a ghastly howl could be heard reverberating through the ship. This can't be happening, Doug said under his breath, as the two men quickly made their way down the hallway. As they reached the door to the armory, they heard what sounded like a roar of wind behind them. The men whirled around, and at the end of the hallway was a humanoid-looking creature, standing taller than both of them at nearly 7 feet, but completely made of fire. The two men screamed as they tried to get the armory open, but the door was jammed. Benjamin and Doug pulled and pulled as the creature came closer and closer towards them, roaring and howling the whole way. The door finally gave way, and Benjamin grabbed an electroshock weapon and attempted to jab at the creature, which was less than 10 feet away now. He could feel the heat emerging from it as he jabbed at it with the weapon. But the creature barely flinched. The two men began running the opposite way down the corridor to escape the creature, but it was right on their heels. Let's go one more level down, to the cryo chambers. We can try to freeze it, Benjamin yelled as the two men continued running. Doug nodded in agreement as they began descending the ladder that led down to the lower level. As they did, though, the creature grabbed Doug in its flaming hands. To Benjamin's horror, he watched as Doug, screaming, was consumed by the flames of the creature, his skin slowly melting off his face and body, leaving charred remains of muscle and sinew, his eyes and mouth frozen in a terrified expression as he was slowly reduced to ash by the fiery monster. Benjamin screamed in terror as he backed up towards an open cryo chamber. The creature lunged at him, and as it did, Benjamin moved out of the way, and the fire creature slipped right into the open chamber. Benjamin slammed the locking mechanism shut, sealing the thing inside. He pulled the regulator off the control panel and twisted the knob as low as it could go. The chamber began rapidly dropping in temperature, causing the creature to scream and seize until it was frozen solid inside the cryo cell. Benjamin gasped and caught his breath. The only other person he had up here now was dead. He decided to continue his original plan to try to fix the navigation system and get out of deep space. As he made his way back up the ladder and down the corridor towards the control bridge, he began to hear soft whispering, seemingly all around him, and they seemed to get closer and closer. As he drew nearer and nearer to the control bridge, 3 figures emerged from the darkness, snarling and growling. They were humanoid-looking as well, but they were different than the last monster. They looked almost like rotting corpses, with abnormally long limbs and fingers that stretched out toward him. Where their eyes and nose and mouth should have been was just a giant hole, allowing Benjamin to see right through their heads. In a panic, he attempted to jab at the creatures with his electroshock spear. They reacted to it, but they kept on coming forward. He ran towards the control bridge and in one final attempt grabbed the radio and screamed into the mic. "This is the Gene Hen spacecraft. We're in deep space. We are being attacked by some kind of being. Mayday! Mayday!" And all at once they were on him. The 3 faceless monsters, ripping Benjamin apart, limb from limb. Him alive and screaming the whole time, watching parts of his body fly this way and that. As he faded into the darkness, he heard the woman on the radio once again.
2,
3,
7.
8.
Benjamin closed his eyes.
The small town is shaken today as prison transport 2378 was caught in a massive landslide as it made its way back to the county jail from the courthouse. The bus was severely damaged, but miraculously, the driver survived with only minor injuries, as did many of the prisoners and all the guards. The only 2 confirmed fatalities from the tragic accident were Benjamin Daly, who was convicted of the murder of 3 people earlier this year, and Doug Harold, a convicted arsonist. Updates of the story to follow.